Hello, friends. It's Jim here with Science Talk, and I want to discuss with you basically something that's going on in different parts of the world. Fire and flood menace parts of the U.S. and Bangladesh. Fire and flood are on the rise. Bangladesh and New York face more flooding. The American West may see more forests burn. More extreme weather is on the way for people living in Bangladesh, New York, Western U.S., as the prospects of worsening fire and flood is a very distinct possibility. There's a new future for New York. By the close of the century, thanks to sea level rise and global heating, parts of the city could be swept by hurricane-driven catastrophic floods almost every year. Think of, that storm recently, a couple years back, that slammed into New York City. I forget the name of it offhand, but it was flooding the subways and so on. Yeah, it, wrecked homes along the coast, etc. Seeing the same problems for Bangladesh. Scientists have recalculated the risk of flooding by the Brahmaputra River system to find that even without the climate emergency, they had underestimated the likelihood of devastating floods across this landscape that is typically crowded and is low-lying, of course. And in the American West, people living there are facing more and more devastating fire seasons. The area incinerated by severe fires has increased eightfold in the last 40 years, thanks to intensifying heat and drought. Thanks to climate change, drought will become more extended, more frequent, and temperatures, of course, keep increasing. So in 2012, Hurricane Sandy, that's the one I'm thinking of. That's the one that hit New York. Yep. Hurricane Sandy hit the U.S. and it caused $70 billion in damages. And, it's just a once in a 500-year event, and chances are it's probably going to be a little more frequent. So all these findings have been reported in the journal, Climate Change. And they looked at the probabilities of more flooding in Jamaica Bay, which is found on Long Island, New York, along with sea surface temperatures that drive more intense storms, right? Don't forget, the oceans are warming up. Warmer waters fuel storms. It's a part of the reason why hurricanes are more powerful. Floods that tend to happen every century could by 2050 occur every 9 years. By 2080 to 2100, they could become annual events. And 500-year events like Superstorm Sandy can happen every 4 years. Well, isn't that wonderful? Future projections of the hurricane climatology suggest that climate change would lead to storms that move more slowly and are more intense than we ever seen before, hitting, for example, Jamaica Bay. And that's a statement from Reza Marsouli, who is an environmental engineer at the Stevens Institute of Technology in Hoboken, New Jersey, and is also a co-author of this study. Well, yeah, because if the storms are moving slowly and they're just sucking up all that heat energy off the ocean, they're going to pack a wallop. I mean, look what happened with Harvey when it stalled over Texas. It just dumped and dumped and dumped water. The increase in these once-in-a-generation or even less frequent floods is so dramatic because the impact of sea level rise will create greater flooding, even if the storms we are seeing today stayed the same. The hazard that faces Bangladesh, much of which is at sea level on fertile floodplain created by the Ganges Brahmaputra river system, is more nerve-wracking. Its source waters are from the Himalayas, right? So you get the snow melt from there, as well as the monsoon season being an important contributor to basically, for example, flood the rice paddies, provide nutrients so that the farmlands can be replenished, and other important processes that take place. Occasionally, the floods become devastating. 1998, about 70% of the nation was submerged. Floods have occurred in 2007, 2010, 2020. Engineers have been monitoring the flow since the 1950s, and they thought they knew the flood probabilities, but U.S., Australian, Chinese scientists report in their journal, Nature Communications, that they studied the growth rings in ancient trees to find that the Bangladeshis have been living in unusual times for much of the past 70 years based on the evidence contained within the trees looking at their growth rings. Basically, what it's finding is that over the past 70 years, the river flow has been unusually dry, the driest in the last 700 years. The tree ring suggests that the long-term baseline conditions are much wetter than thought, and that's a statement from Mukund Palat Rao, who is of the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory at Columbia University in New York, who's the lead researcher on this study. So whether you consider climate models or natural variability, we're seeing the same thing, or we should expect more flooding, a higher frequency of flooding than that's currently projected. And then finally, in a report published in the Geophysical Research Letters Journal, over the past 40 years, thanks to global warming and more emissions of greenhouse gases, etc., state of California has experienced a series of droughts that lasted for years, and this, of course, brings greater fire seasons. Fire seasons are beginning earlier, lasting longer, and it's almost at the point now the fire season is year-round. Not good. So in this report, they defined high-severity fires as those that killed 95% of all trees. They then counted the most severe episodes of burning in 4 great regions of the western U.S. from 1985 to 2017. They found that by 2017, the area wiped out by severe fires had risen 8 times to more than 2,000 square kilometers, about 800 square miles. Much of the tree cover of the U.S. West is adapted to episodes of fire, but the frequency and intensity of the recent fires threatens the future of the forest, period. As more area burns at high severity, the likelihood of conversion to different forest types or even to non-forest increases, said the lead author of this study, Sean Parks, who is with the U.S. Forest Service Rocky Mountain Research Station. At the same time, the post-fire climate is making it increasingly difficult for seedlings to establish and survive, further reducing the potential for forests to return to the pre-fire conditions. In other words, we're increasing mortality of the sapling so that eventually the forest will not be able to replenish the members, that burn down, the trees that burn down, further leading to the loss of the forest, period. So, just some quick findings in some journals here, sharing what's going on, the likelihood of flooding and fires and drought, and so forth. So climate change is here, folks. It's already happening. It's already doing things. Thank you for your time. Hello, folks. This is Jim here with Science Talk, asking you to please subscribe to my channel and to inform others of my channel and of the work that I do. Please share to social media platforms that you use. Also, as a reminder, don't forget to click the bell so that you know when I load up more videos. Finally, I ask that you Support the work that I do by becoming a patron at patreon.com. Details in the description box below. Thank you for your support.